fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. Today's special guest is Casey Biggs. You know him as Damar on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now come join me as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Biggs. Thank you so much for coming to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
I'm a big fan of yours. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is one of my favorite shows ever to watch on television. It was so smart, and I want to thank you so much for being willing to come on and talk about it.
Yep, absolutely. So the writing was great on that show, just great.
It was extremely smart. I mean, even for a franchise like Star Trek that had a lot of good series, I think that one stands above it in both writing, acting, and how intelligent a lot of the plot lines really were.
That's true. I mean, you know, it was the sort of the bastard child of Star Trek. So what that means is that the writers could really sort of do what they wanted to do without having any interference like all the other shows did. And with Ira Stephen Bear, who was a great showrunner, and those great writers like Ron Moore and Hans Beimler, all those great writers, they just came up with fantastic things. And also, you know, the show was a departure from Star Trek in a way, because the moral lines were very different from the bad alien of the week kind of things, which we didn't really do that.
Yeah, it's really kind of funny for a Star Trek show that, in many ways, as you said, was always on the fence, I think, far as popularity, maybe even cancellation. Looking back on it this many years, almost 30 plus years later, it really, I think, has stand out as being the best example of Star Trek in many ways.
Yeah, because it just, you know, although, you know, some people criticize the fact that it was on a space station that was static and there, they could delve much more deeply into character work and character studies. And if you notice on that show, the recurring characters, of which I was one, had incredible story arcs that went through that whole thing, to the point where sometimes, you know, there was 5-6 shows where we took over the station. It was like our show. So
right.
it was terrific. And they had terrific actors. I mean, a lot of the actors were really classically trained actors, and they could handle the language and all that, which was a joy to be able to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. For instance, I read that you were a graduate of Juilliard with a BFA, which is one of the most premier acting schools on the planet. I mean, it's so famous.
Yes.
So
very difficult. I mean, you know, to get into that show. When I auditioned for that, I think there were 1,000 people auditioned. They only took 30 of them.
Holy crap.
And then they cut that down to 15 after the second year. So it was pretty exclusive.
So, I mean, do you remember what your what your rehearsal was like, or whatever, to get into Juilliard? Like what you did to?
Oh yeah, I didn't know. You know, I'd been acting since in high school, and I can sing, so I did musicals and all of that. And I had some really good mentors. And you had to do when I auditioned, you had to do a classical piece and a contemporary piece. And that was it. Now, if you go to audition there, it's an entire 2-day thing you have to go through. Yeah. I went in, I did 2 pieces. I think one of them was from The Glass Menagerie, and one of them was from School for Wives, which is a restoration play. And I finished it, and there's about 5 people watching, and they said, "Would you need a scholarship to come here?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And they said, "Okay." So that was that. But I had Robin Williams was in my class, Kelsey Grammer was in my class, Harriet Hare. I mean, we had an extraordinary group of talented people that came out of there. And you look at who came out of there now. I mean, you know, who's the Star Wars guy? Adam Driver, Juilliard guy. Jessica Chastain, Juilliard. I mean, just so many people that have come out of there that have got terrific careers going now.
So what was it about Juilliard, having obviously never been to Juilliard, that separates it, that makes it that much of a mecca for acting classes and training?
Well, it was Juilliard is a professional school, for one thing. I mean, you do get a degree, but you only really study what you need to use for your profession, which I don't think is always good for people coming right out of high school, because you don't really get an education. You know how to, you know, they teach you how to speak and how to breathe and how to dance and how to sword fight, and you know, teach you iambic pentameter and all that stuff. But the fact that the teachers were all highly professional, usually working professors as well. Like I taught for 10 years at the master's program at the New School in New York City. I taught acting and directing there, and it's a fascinating thing to because most people, you know, if you're a wonderful actor, you don't necessarily all know how to teach it, you know. And there's a lot of teachers who aren't very good actors, but they're great teachers. Luckily, I was both, so I hope so. But I had a great 10 years there, and I didn't even really I didn't think I would enjoy it that much, but I did. And my wife and I, we bought a house out in California, and I finally unplugged from New York about 3 years ago.
So the atmosphere on campus for Juilliard, was it one of like camaraderie or was it one of competition among the students?
It's very intense. For one thing, there was no campus. It was at Lincoln Center, and it was the building, the Juilliard building. When I was there, they didn't even have a what do you call it when dormitories. They actually have dormitories now. I think actually Robin did a couple concerts to raise money so they could build a dormitory. Excuse me. And also the difference between what happens now, if you get into Juilliard now, you are there, you're there for all 4 years. When I was there, there was always the sword of Damocles hanging over your head that they could kick you out or not ask you back, which they didn't do to Kelsey Grammer. They didn't ask him back after the second year. And Chris Reeves, same thing, you know, and there was a thing, you can't work when you're in school. So I think Chris was getting some work out there, and they said, well, you're either working or you're going to school. So he decided to go to work. But the training is incredibly intense and concentrated and hard. And I was, you know, I've said many times that I'd be a better plumber, you know, having gone to Juilliard, no matter what you do, because it's like 4 years of self-analysis, basically. Mm. And then once you get out of there, it takes about 5 years for you to get back what you went in there with the talent. They saw the talent, and then they sort of strip you away and give you all these tools, and then it takes a while for that to come back into one thing with the actor and the talent and the craft together, you know. So
as someone who, once again, you went going to Juilliard and having obviously graduated from that and putting together your career, what did you learn about the craft from Juilliard specifically? Did you learn, and what was maybe transferable and what was just pure talent on your side and understanding of acting?
Well, having been a teacher, taught for 10 years at the master's program in the New School, I can teach you craft. You either have talent or you don't. I can teach you to relax. I can teach you to concentrate. I can teach you how to move. I can teach you how to break down a script. I can teach you how to be present in the moment, those kinds of things. You either have talent or you don't. But craft is teachable. And that's what you come out of Juilliard. In particular, like I said, the last 2 years there was only 15 students in my whole class. And you're always in production all the time. The daytime, you're, you know, going through classes, and then in the evening you're rehearsing. And that was an extraordinary life at New York City in the 70s when I was there. It was an amazing time. I still don't know how I survived. I think my mother sent me $35 a week. I was from Toledo, Ohio. I didn't know anything about New York, for Christ's sake. But I love it now. I'm very happy not to live in New York now. It's changed. And when I taught, I mean, it was $250,000 a year to get a master's degree from the New School. You get out of school and you're lucky if you make $250 a week. So it's a very different landscape from when I got to school. When I got to school, there was all kinds of work. I started working right away, and I started doing film and television. And then I came out to California, did a bunch of film and television, and I decided I wanted to go back on the stage. So I went back on the stage for about 10 years.
So as someone who's obviously a successful actor yourself, and also apparently a successful teacher, are you able to figure out when you have a student in your class who's going to be successful and who's not going to be? Is there something tangible in an individual that makes or breaks that individual's career?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I think you can spot talent. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of very successful actors who are not all that talented, but they got great craft. You
Yeah.
know, there's a very difference between doing television, film, and doing stage work. You can't take a great film actor and throw him on stage and expect him to be great if they haven't had the kind of training that they need to have, which is sustaining over a 2 hour whatever period to be able to make somebody believable. Film, it's a whole different ballgame. I can take anybody and probably make them a good film actor because I can just. I mean, I remember going in and watching editing in Deep Space Nine. People shall remain nameless, but they weren't liking a particular performance, so they just went to a different episode, took some outtakes of that, and stuck it in that episode. So it had nothing to do with that.
Holy crap!
So film is not an actor's medium. The stage is the actor's medium, and I think what I was fortunate to be able to do at a young age is to do a lot of both of them, and to be able to get to a point of doing the kind of work I really believed in, which I can. It's interesting being a teacher. You can you have to be able to say what you think in a very specific way. So I think the greatest actors are the ones who don't show you what they're doing. They're brave enough to go to the place they need to go to, and then just allow the camera in or allow the audience into the stage. But if you ever start showing me what you're feeling or doing all that, then you're failing in my estimation.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. And I think that's interesting what you said about film, that in film is part of the acting, the editing then.
Oh, 90% of it, I think.
Really? Wow, okay. I never thought about that.
Just watch, take a television show or a film, and then watch how many cuts there are in each scene. You know, like if you and I are doing a scene and you're sitting across from me, they'll do a master shot of us together, then they'll shoot over my shoulder to you, they'll shoot over your shoulder to me, maybe they shoot straight down or this or that, whatever. Just, it's interesting to just to count how many times they cut in a particular scene, you know, and who's talking, who's not on screen, you know. I mean, like if you're right now, I could choose as a director and editor to be looking at you while I'm talking to you. So it really has nothing to do with shooting me. I've shot television shows where the actor I was supposed to be playing with wasn't even there. You know?
That's crazy.
That was weird. Yeah.
Now this is just a guess on my part, and I might be totally wrong, but it feels like there's more cuts nowadays, in especially film, than in the past. Like if you go to maybe shows from the 60s, 70s films, and because the scenes each shot is shorter, has that changed the world of acting because of the shorter scenes in the cuts?
Well, I think it's an age era kind of thing. We don't train people. People are not trained or schooled to really have very long attention spans anymore. And the whole music video world is changing. Boom, 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 boom. Right? I mean, it's rare, as you said, to really be able to watch a scene unfold for a long time. You know who does that kind of, or did that kind of work really well? Not much anymore, as Woody Allen did that. He would let a scene run very long time. Like the Jane Campion's film that just came out, Power of the Dog. There's some very long scenes in there, and for an actor, that's wonderful because you actually get to live in that moment. You know, but you know, also if you screw up, you get to go back and do it again. I mean, I have a little trick that I do. If I'm doing a scene in a television or film and I don't like what I'm doing, I'll just curse. And they got to cut and go back and do it over. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's go back and do it again, you know.
That's really smart.
But I did a TV movie once where I was played a lawyer and had a big, long closing statement thing. And I did it, and it was great, and everybody started applauding on the set and this and that. And then they say, hold on, because they have to check what they call checking the gate, which means that they go in and see if the lenses were clean and all that. well, there was something in the lens. We had to go back and do it all over again. So they didn't get to keep that take that was so good that I did, that I thought was wonderful. But, and on stage, it's like running a marathon. You have to gauge where you are at the beginning and where you are at the end, and how you get to that place. To, hopefully the writing is good for the specific scenes, and make that all, again, feel like it's coming from a human being. I mean, I did the American premiere of the Odyssey that was written by Derek Walcott, who's got a Nobel Prize for poetry there, and that was written in iambic hexameter. Now, you know what iambic hexameter is? Iambic pentameter is what Shakespeare's written at.
Right.
That's 10 beats to a line. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Iambic hexameter is 12 beats to a line. And so try to do a 3-hour play about Odysseus coming in every single line is 12 beats to a line. It was pretty extraordinary.
That's crazy. And I think a lot of listeners who are not familiar with the world of film, I think there's an assumption, and as a fan, that when you watch a film or even television, that it all goes in chronological order from beginning to end. I think we don't think that, the end was shot first and the beginning was shot near the end. And I think, and as an actor, you have to kind of anticipate where you want to end your character and where you're going to begin the character. And because it's out of order, how confusing is that for you to try to build the character up there?
You have to know where you are in the emotional arc of a role when you're doing film work. I did this. It was the very, very first dramatic IMAX film ever shot. It was called The Price of Freedom, and it's still running in San Antonio. They built an IMAX theater for it. But have you seen IMAX films? Like 4-story screens?
I've seen one or two. I think I saw the first Phantom Menace, Star Wars Phantom Menace on an IMAX. I think I've seen 1 or 2.
Yeah, but you saw them on an IMAX, but they weren't shot in IMAX.
Oh, okay.
That's the difference. Like when you shoot it on IMAX, the frames are like this big, like 5 inches, and you have to design it foreground, middle ground, and background. And literally, I was doing the scene. The director said, "Well, you just made history right now." I said, "Why?" So this is the largest close-up ever shot. And that means that my eyes, if I looked from here to there, it would travel like 40 feet. But the point of the story is, my very first day on that set, which was with 500 reenactors, and we were shooting in where John Wayne shot his version of the Alamo, I shot the death scene. So I had to know, I had to be at the climax of the piece, the very first shot, first day of filming that I ever did. So it was very interesting. And that's, again, comes with craft, I think. Having to sit down, break down the script, knowing where you need to be, and then also leaving yourself alone enough to actually to be surprised. There's a phrase that I use for myself, and when I teach, is I call you have to give yourself permission to give yourself permission to be vulnerable, give yourself permission to be hurt, to give yourself permission to be evil or whatever, So it's an interesting thing. So much of it has to do with leaving yourself alone, and you have to train to leave yourself alone.
Can you explain what you mean by that? Leave yourself alone?
When you see bad acting, what is it that you're seeing?
I'm seeing a person act.
Yeah, I'm seeing usually a person being self-conscious. So the kind of acting that I love is when the actor is so incredibly unself-conscious that you feel like you should feel like you're a voyeur on something that you shouldn't be watching. That's the feeling that you should have, and that's the kind of, like I call relaxation, concentration, and imagination that you need to have to be able to get to the place to do the kind of work that I'm interested in doing.
As an actor, do you also feel that, or an actor should be willing to, I'm not sure the best phrase for it, but maybe embarrass themselves, like go too far in a scene and push it too far and be asked to come back later? Or should you hit the moment of what the director's looking for?
Well, I mean, a good director is going to just help you be better than you can be by yourself. And, a lot of times in film and television, the directors have no idea how to work with actors. They don't know how they know where to put the camera, this and that, but they don't know how to talk to actors or talk to them That's why, I mean, I direct a lot, and I actually prefer directing more than I do acting right now. But what you want is a director that's going to make you feel safe, and make you feel good about taking those kinds of making those kinds of choices that are risky. You know, like I just saw I saw The Power of the Dog like 3 times because I think the acting is so incredible in that, because it doesn't look like anybody's acting, and it takes a lot of confidence to do nothing and still be the character that you need to be in the story, to be the storyteller. You know.
So I do want to go back just a little bit when you talked about Star Trek Deep Space Nine and how they edited from other shows and outtakes into the main show without giving anything away or putting anyone on the spot. Can you, if we were observant enough as fans, could we tell which moments they were? Like, were you able, as going back and watching, go, oh, that's from a different show episode?
No, you couldn't. In this particular case, it was that they needed a reaction shot that they didn't get from the actor. So they went to a different episode, got a reaction shot, and edited into that thing. But no, you couldn't.
Oh, that's good, because that sounds like one of the funniest. I never heard of any show doing that. That sounds really funny.
You know, when I was getting started out too, I would do a looping. You know what looping is, right? Looping is when the dialogue doesn't work, you go back in and you redo the looping, you watch it. Well, I've actually redid entire performances of other people. They didn't like the performance, they didn't like the way they sounded, so they would brought me in, and you have to watch this big huge screen, and you got headphones on, and it beeps. It goes beep beep beep, and the 4th beep you got to speak, and you get to make make your voice match the lip movement. But I did a lot of that in the early days.
Well, for every fan of Star Trek, they know you as Damar of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which was an incredible part. You know, and everyone loves the Cardassians and Deep Space Nine. I mean, they're obviously the bad guys for the show, but everyone loves the Cardassians. And you played obviously Gul Ducat's number 1 guy. How did you get involved?
The story with that was, I mean, literally, I've told this at conventions and stuff before, but I got a call to go into audition. So I went into audition, and there's 20 guys there. And I pick up the sides, you know, the piece that they want you to read, and there's 5 words, literally 5 flipping words. The words are, they're in range, sir, fire. That was the whole audition. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I went to Juilliard, for Christ's sake. They could get an extra to play this part. So, you know, I went into the room, and there's 6 or 8 producers there sitting there. I sit down there, and I said, well, they're in range, sir, fire. And they said, whoa, that was really great. I'm thinking, who are these people? You know, what the hell? So I went home, and I got a call from my agent. Said, oh, they loved you. They want you to come back tomorrow. Jesus. So I go back the next day, and instead of 20 people, there's 5 guys auditioning. And I go in and do the same thing. And they said, oh, that was really intelligent reading. I said, I'm thinking, intelligent reading? What the hell? But what I didn't know is they had plans for that character. They didn't know what plans, but they had plans. And what also I didn't know, Ira Stephen Bear, who was the executive producer, he's a huge fan of the Alamo. And he had seen my Alamo movie. I had the job when I walked in the door, and I didn't even know it because I just showed up because he loved me so much in that other movie.
Yeah.
And then when I got on the set, you know, I'd never been in that much makeup before. And the director came over to me, and he whispered in my ear, said, well, they've got big plans for this character. I said, oh, don't tell me that. I got 2 pounds of rubber on my face. I don't even know what I'm doing. So anyway, that's how that whole thing started. And then I ended up the leader of the Empire. So, and they didn't have to do that. They did that because they liked what I was doing. They could have killed me off so many times, you know, but they didn't. They loved the way Mark Alamo and I worked together. They loved the way Jeff Combs and I worked together, Wayoon. And they loved me so much in Quark's Bar, in a scene I did in Quark's Bar, they turned me into an alcoholic for 2 years.
I remember that episode.
If you notice, you rarely saw a shot of me in the last 2 seasons that I wasn't drinking something. And I hated that. I hated it.
So, I mean, I remember that scene, and it was interesting for Damar, because once again, when the heroes eventually of Cardassia, But obviously in the episode you're talking about, he actually is one who screws up and gives away the plans to kind of defeat the whole mind system and everything else. They gave him a really fascinating arc, considering, once again, he was not meant to be a character with an arc like that.
No, and also what they did is, watching what you do, and it gives them ideas, and they start writing more and more. And it's like with Jeff Combs. I mean, his first episode of Wayun, they killed him off, and they said, "Wait a minute, we love this guy. Why'd we kill him off?" And they said, "Hey, it's outer space. We can just create a planet where he gets cloned every time he gets killed." It's one of my favorite lines in one of the scenes that we were doing. I kill him off, and then a new Wayun comes in, and I'm sitting there drinking, of course, and he starts giving me some crap, and I say, "Hey, you better be careful, or I'll be talking to Wayun number 9."
Well, was there any point where the writers gave you actual background information on Damar and to give you some insight into the character?
No. And then, for instance, there was another scene I was in. I was actually in bed with some Cardassian woman, I guess. And Jeff comes in as Wayun, and he says, "Well, we reported that they just killed your wife and your child." I didn't even know I had a wife and a child until that scene. And had they told me, I could have played it. Would have played it a little differently. But
yeah.
No. In the beginning, I thought, oh, Damar and Ducat's daughter might have a thing together. And I started to play it that way, and it didn't go that way at all. So, sort of weird.
So, when you're playing a character, especially once he started getting developed, I mean, obviously at first when he has only a couple of lines, it's it may not matter as much. But as you start developing the character or have him get developed on screen, did you have to create a character profile for yourself in order to play the role?
Well, I mean, yeah, in my mind, because I didn't know anything about Cardassians when I first started. And Mark Alimo is like, the ultimate Cardassian.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, this guy's the Patriot. He's there to do a job. And then what was interesting is as the seasons went on, they gave much more of a conscience and made it a much more complex character. And what was interesting, like I said, they could have killed me off many times. Maybe the 5th season, 6th season, maybe. And the way they worked with us, you never knew when you were coming back or not. So I got a job on Broadway, and I was shooting one day, and I went to Ira. He was on the set, and I said, "Hey, Ira, look, I got this great job. I'm going to do a show on Broadway." He said, "What? When?" I said, "Well, I'm leaving in a week." He said, "We got you written in for 13 episodes." I said, "But you didn't tell me. You didn't talk to my manager. You didn't say, They just kept that to themselves." So to hand it to them, what they did is they flew me back on my days off from New York, and I would shoot all my stuff on Monday and then fly back to New York and then continue the rest of the week of the play. So they could have killed me off in a heartbeat there,
Yeah. So in once again, and if you had to look back, having looked at the entire arc of your character now, from first appearance to what happened to him at the end of the show, and you knew where it was actually going to go, how would you have played the character perhaps differently in preparation?
I think it would have helped me get a deeper sense of what the plot was. I mean, as it is, you get a script and you make that script work. You take what they call givens. These are all sort of actory terms. What's given, and you try to understand your place in the storytelling of that, and then fulfill that. And if you've got a good enough director, they give you some really good notes to get to that place. And it's a lot of time in television anyway. It's about hurry up and wait, and also about they got to get it done. They got to get it done. You have to get 8 pages shot every single day, and so you don't have a whole hell of a lot of time to, like a feature film. I just did a film that's coming out, big movie, coming out next November. A David O. Russell film. You know who he is, David O. Russell?
Yes, I do know who he is.
What did he do? He did.
Is he the Three
American
Kings?
American Hustle, and
Three Kings, right?
Was that Three Kings?
Three Kings. Yep. Yeah.
American Hustle, Joy. anyway, he did this new film that I got a really nice part in. And listen to this: me, Robert De Niro, Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Rock. I mean, just everybody in the world is in this damn thing. And the DP, the director of photography, is the guy that got the Academy Award for The Revenant. So that was really interesting. And what was interesting about that, talk about being prepared or knowing what you're doing, never read a script, never saw the sides. The way this director works, he's like, you and I are shooting this right now. He'd be sitting on the side with his monitor, say, okay, you say this, now you say that, you say this, now you say that, now you say this. So it was so bizarre
Right.
to do that. And it was $100 million film. I mean, it was gigantic. But boy, it was odd. And there was actually a sense of freedom there. Again, if you could leave yourself alone. And you hear a line and you say the line. De Niro, same thing. He stood there. They threw him a line. He said the line. They threw him a line. He said the line. Threw him a line. He said the line. And it was really interesting.
Are you able to say what film it is, or is it on a NDA?
When we shot it, it was called Canterbury Glass. Now that's the glass they make fake eyes out of. And it takes place from 1918 to 1930. But I think it's going to be a really, really wonderful movie. Incredible actors. I mean, just terrific.
Well, I hope you come back. I still want to talk about more about Deep Space Nine, but I hope when you're ready to talk about that movie, you come back on and talk about it. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and also I just did this Netflix series about Colin Kaepernick. It's called Colin in Black and White, and that's out now. That came out a month or two ago. That was a wonderful, really wonderful piece. You know who Colin Kaepernick is, right?
Oh yeah, San Francisco 49ers, correct? When
the guy that took the knee. Yeah. I played one of his first important coaches in that, so that was very interesting. And both those films we shot in the height of COVID, so it was really interesting.
And when is that one coming out?
Oh, that's out already.
Oh, is that already?
It's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. Yeah.
All right, I'll make sure I'll put it on when we put the YouTube video, put it out the link or the information.
Yeah, it's good. It's very good. Disturbing. It's good.
So that's coming out around Netflix, and you see the other movies come out in November, right?
November 4th, it premieres in time for next year's Academy Awards, which I bet it'll be in contention. I'll tell you.
Oh, the one with David O. Russell.
Yeah.
Well, most of the movies that he does do gets noticed. I mean, he's one of the premier directors and that tends to get Academy recognition.
Yeah, when I tell you, I've never worked like that in my life before.
Yeah.
If you're the kind of actor that learns your lines and shows up, doesn't work, you're screwed. But if you're the kind of actor that can just leave yourself alone and say, okay, come on, give me go for it. So he liked me a lot, so I'm happy with that.
So someone who is an acting teacher, are you able to look at that style of directing and understand the purpose of it? Or
I understand it. I don't agree with it because I think I respect actors enough that they can bring a whole hell of a lot to their game.
Yeah.
But who do you say? I think as an actor, you have to be a jack of all trades, man. You have to be able to. They told me, the producer said, this is the way he likes to work. Are you okay with that? I said, yeah, sure, I'm okay with that. I don't know, but yeah, but it works. It's wonderful.
So going back a little bit about for Deep Space Nine, going to mostly on your character Damar, having played the character and kind of watched him develop again over the course of seasons, what is your view of him as an individual? Because once again, the Cardassians in many ways were allegorical for, in my opinion, they were supposed to be like the Nazis for how they handled Bajor. And he was, obviously he's just a soldier just following orders, but once again, he's still on that side of things. At least, I know later on he becomes more clear-cut, almost heroic. When you're viewing him as an individual character, what was your view of him? Is he basically a good individual? Is he, inherently bad? I know he also supposedly had some issues with Bajorans himself. So what was your stance on who he was?
Well, given what we knew or what I knew about it, you start from a place of the guy is of service. He is to be of service. But then once if you notice, they turned him into a sort of who were the bad guys in there?
The Dominion.
The Dominion, sort of raised me up and put me in charge to be their lackey, right? Because I was drinking all the time, and they needed somebody like that to do it. So they had all those great scenes with me and Damar and Wayoon going through the war there. But then once I gave up drinking in the show, I started put together and realized that I had to really step it up if I wanted to be of use and service to my world and my race. And even in the end, they gave me more of a sense of humor, which I liked a lot. But he was a patriot. I mean, he was the one who was willing to die for the cause, which is what he did in the last 5 minutes of the last episode of the last season, which was great. It's a funny story about that too, which I've told before, but I get the last script and it says, Damar is killed by ND alien. You know what ND alien means? Nondescript alien.
Nondescript.
So I went to the director, who I knew he was a friend, and I said, "Oh, come on, yeah, I can't be killed by a nondescript alien. I mean, come on, I'm Damar. I'm saving the race." And he said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I want a John Woo death. You ever seen any John Woo movies?
Yeah.
They're like bullet ballets, right?"
Yeah.
And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I want to have 2 huge weapons, and I want to take out 50 Jem'Hadar, and I want my chest to explode, and I want to die in somebody's arms." He thought for a minute. He said, "Okay," and that's how I died in the show.
That is awesome.
Isn't that funny? But if I didn't have the relationship with the director like that, I probably couldn't have said that or couldn't have gotten what I wanted.
Yeah, it's funny that they made your character an alcoholic, and that's kind of an interesting spin on this, heroic type character at the end.
Yeah.
Well, was there anything they were going to do with the character as far as his arc that you were like, I don't want this as his arc, or?
No, I mean, I really hated drinking that stuff. I mean, it was Carol syrup, and you try to take a shot of Carol syrup and act like you like it. That just proves what a good actor I am. I look like I like this stuff. But that was terrible. And even though, so much so, the last season when I came in for the first day, they said, "Oh, Casey, you're going to be so happy." I said, "What?" He said, "They changed the Canar because you'd hated it so much." I said, "Oh my goodness, thank goodness. What is it?" And they said, "Sugar-free maple syrup." But anyway, no, that was good. No, but I have to say that they treated this character with great respect and gave it incredible storylines and complex relationships, and the chemistry between Jeff and I, Combs and I, was so good. And they kept writing more and more of that, which was great.
Well,
and,
well, I think it's also kind of fascinating that you were mentioning how initially you thought you were considering that there was going to be a thing between Damar and Zael, Ducat's daughter, but those fans of the show, and spoilers for if you haven't watched Deep Space Nine, Damar kills Zael.
She was a traitor. She was a traitor.
Right. But that's an interesting story arc. If you go with what you thought about, and that he had a thing for her, to willing to kill someone he cared about for the good of Cardassia is a hell of a move.
Well, but the thing is, I was playing it that way. They never wrote it that way. So they made her in like Garrick sort of something, I think, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it's just that I was playing this sort of, flirty thing, and I thought they didn't even go anywhere with that. So, but if there were 3 different actresses that played that part, and I don't know if they were trying to find the right chemistry or the right what, but I'm the one that killed her. So they could have killed me, but they didn't kill me.
Well, I mean, once again, as you mentioned, you're in a lot of scenes with Mark Alamo, who is Gul Dukat, who once again was a phenomenal actor. Gul Dukat it's actually considered by many one of the best villains in all Star Trek.
Oh.
He was so well developed.
Incredible he was, but don't tell Mark that he was a villain. He does not believe he was a villain.
No.
But I remember we were in a convention in Germany one time, and somebody mentioned that whole Nazi thing, and he got all pissed off. What do you mean Nazi? We're not Nazis. Settle down, Mark. Settle down. Yeah.
I mean, the chemistry between you two guys were phenomenal. I mean, there could have been a whole show of just you and Dukat playing off each other. And for a little while, when they had, I think you were taking on the Klingons by yourselves or whatever on that kind of like rebellion kind of part of that episode. I always thought to myself, they made a spinoff of just this. People would sit and watch just this.
Oh, they could. They're so fascinating, those people, because once the Klingons became good guys, they had to come up with another bad guy.
Right.
So they created this race. But what was cool is that, you never knew where Garrick was, back and forth. You saw Dukat and he stayed sort of a bad guy throughout the whole thing. Who knows where Dukat is now, flying through the universe. And Damar, he saw the light. And he said, okay, he even became, friends with Kira in the end. Because, their two races hated each other.
Yep.
Funny, we had a scene where we get into an argument, she beats the hell out of me. And I come in the next scene and I'm all bruised up, not a single mark on her. The skinny little, woman, she beats the hell out of this, monster alien guy. But whatever, she was a bigger star in the show than I was.
Well, I remember that one. That was when he was trying to get information out of Zayel because I think Zayel, at that moment, he thought she was the spy, or she was going to help the Federation.
Yeah.
And so she didn't want him talking to Zayel, so she beats the shit out of him. That was really kind of funny.
Show up in the next scene, I'm all bruised up and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
So when they finally kill off Damar, did you feel that was a worthy end to the character, or did you wish they kept him alive for, later stories, books, whatever?
That would be. Of course, you'd like to stay alive to if anything else comes up to do it. But if you got to go, that's the way to go.
Mm.
You go as the hero of the Empire, saving your race. That's the way to go. And if you notice, Garrick is the one who offed Wei-Yun because he had a hand in my demise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back now 30 years, was there a moment or was there a time when you realized just how successful Deep Space Nine was going to be? I mean, obviously Star Trek was already a huge franchise, but early, if you watch the first 2 or 3 seasons of Deep Space Nine, you kind of had a sense that this was, as you said, not only the bastard child, but the forgettable series until about season 4 or 5 when it really just took off.
It took off when the war took over.
Right.
Mark and I really took off. And, I'm not saying that we were responsible for the better ratings and all that, but the ratings went up when we sort of came into it a lot more. It was, I knew nothing about it when I got involved. I watched the very first Star Trek series when I was young. I didn't watch The Next Generation, and I had not watched any of Deep Space Nine. So I had no idea what I was stepping into. You learn how to be a Cardassian by watching Mark Alimo, actually. And, but no, the answer is no. I didn't know that. I didn't know the scope of the world I was stepping into. And to this day, as you say, DS9 is going to be 30 years next year, and it's still as popular as ever. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, I think it was because, once again, around season 4 or 5, whenever the war officially kind of starts, they allowed the characters to me, transcend the standard Star Trek characters, which usually were relatively bland, always, you knew inherently always good. They're always going to make the right decision. They're always going to be morally good. Deep Space Nine kind of said, that's not people. And I think in many ways, if you look at modern Star Trek, Discovery, Picard, that moral ambiguity in Star Trek goes back to Deep Space Nine and experimenting with that.
Deep Space Nine was the first series, the Star Trek series, to do that. You always didn't know where they were going to come down,
Yeah.
You didn't know what Cisco was going to choose to do, or Odo, or any of those people. And that's what I think was wonderful about the writing. It was so multi-layered in what they were doing. Yeah. Kira's character, and Dax and all of those people. It just that broke the mold a little bit, because it wasn't like, as I said, the bad alien of the week and let's make everything good.
And I think also what was a big help to me as a fan, or a big important to me as a fan, I must have been as an actor, that Star Trek was Deep Space Nine was the first Star Trek show to allow episodes and arcs to develop course over a season. Every other Star Trek, like Next Generation, the original series, when the episode ends, whatever trauma, happened to these characters, whatever happened, events occurred, it was forgot about. The next episode, clean slate, new, start from scratch, new characters to do their thing. Deep Space Nine, things played out over a course of seasons. I mean, Odo's moral questions about with being a changeling that built up over episodes. Your character Damar developed, and I think you only do that when you allow an entire season to develop like that as continuing stories.
It's true, because I mean, remember, I think it was in season 4 or 5 where we took over the space station.
Yep.
For 7 episodes, 6-7 episodes, it was our station. It was our show. Everybody else was off on, some little shuttle ships or something.
Yep.
And when we were shooting, we never even saw the regular actors, because they were shooting somewhere else doing something. So yeah, they would do these huge story arcs, and it was wonderful to play those things. Just wonderful. I hand it to those writers. If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
I mean, it was ballsy too. I mean, once again, you have Deep Space Nine where the main characters are even on the show, and they were some of the best episodes. I mean, those episodes where you have Damar, Dukat, and all that in charge of the changeling on Deep Space Nine. You have Kara was on there as a rebel. Kind of like the underground. Those were, in my opinion, some of the best episodes, because once again, it was such a change of pace and such a question of you actually felt. I mean, damn well Deep Space Nine is going to be eventually a Federation outpost, but when you watch the episodes, you think to yourself, how's this going to happen? How can they resolve any of this? And it works,
It did, and also he had what Ira Bear called his repertory company. You had me, Mark Alimo, Jeff Combs, Max Kredenchik, Aaron Eisenberg, all these wonderful actors who were they weren't regular characters, but they were part of that whole ensemble, and they just kept writing for it. Martok, J.G. Hertzler just wonderful actors, and it's rare that you get such a deep bench, as you could call it, in sports terms, and that actors who could handle language, handle the physicality, handle the storytelling, carry a story, all that stuff.
And it was just amazing. And once again, it was so beloved that there was that documentary that came out, was it 3 or 4 years ago? I think it was called like What Was Left Behind or What We Left Behind, which was also a fabulous examination of the show as well. And I'm also a love letter to it. And was that fun talking about it, coming on and talking about it on the documentary?
Yeah, that was a labor of love for Ira, who produced that. Along with Dave Zappone, who's actually doing another one about Voyager now. And the thing that was interesting, they needed some money to finish the project, and they did a GoFundMe thing, and we all made a little thing. Within 2 days, they had like $700,000, all from fans, because they all pieces. And we premiered it in London, but it took about 3 years to shoot that thing. And did you see it? You saw it, right?
Oh, of course I saw it. Yeah.
That wonderful piece where we're at the end of it, we're all singing. The Rat Pack guys are singing that song, and it was so thrilling to see that. And then I love things about process anyway. And what Ira made that whole documentary about was the process of doing Deep Space Nine and creating it, and what it took and all of that. I love that kind of piece. So I'm very proud to be a part of that.
I mean, how does it feel to know that once again, 30 years later, you did a role, Damar, that the fans still talk about? You're probably worshiped at every convention you show up to by the fans who just, once again, just embrace you and the character that you played. How does it feel to know that Damar will always be this beloved character and you'll always be loved as him?
Well, that's great. I mean, I call it the gift that keeps on giving, in many different ways. And I say, did you see Trekkies 2, by the way?
I did not see Trekkies 2.
You should see Trekkies 2, because it's about the fans in Europe. And I happened to be over at a convention in Italy, and they asked if they could shoot me and do an interview. I said, yeah, sure. And so I did. And I say in that piece, I said, what's so fascinating about this, 50 years from now, you're not going to be going to, ER conventions or Friends conventions, but you are going to still be going to Star Trek conventions 50 years.
Exactly.
That's how potent this storytelling was, and will be, I think.
Yes. I think so. I mean, especially considering I think Star Trek does a fantastic job over the decades of evolving with the fan base, the culture, and not only that, but not only does the new shows adapt to it, but the old shows like Deep Space Nine is also done in such a way that I think transcends this time period as well. And people from whatever 10, 30, 40 years ago can look at it and go, okay, this still speaks to me somehow, somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's what the brilliance of Gene Roddenberry to deal with all of these huge human issues like religion and sexuality and race and bigotry and all of that stuff. And because these were aliens going through this, they could tell the story, and all of a sudden people go, wait a minute, that's really like my life, So it was genius on his part to do that, and they just carried it on.
Well, yeah, like I said, I really loved what you did, Damar, on Deep Space Nine, and I want to thank you so much, Mr. Biggs, for coming on my show.
Pleasure.
And like I said, when you're ready to talk about David Russell's movie as well, please come back so we can discuss that as well. I would love to.
Okay, contact me when that comes up so I remember. All right.
I totally will, sir. And